Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Bible Thumper Podcast, where somebody's got to say it. My name is Patrick Hayes, your regular host, and with me tonight is my beautiful wife, JoAnna, and we are talking about Christian families and the sacrifices that they need to make in order to be successful. So we were talking about this the last time we got together, last month, and we had several points that we wanted to get through. We did not get through all of them. So this week, we're kind of going to talk about the last two. And the last one could kind of go on forever. So, we put a bunch of sub points, smaller points, I don't know what you want to call them, at the end of this little discussion. So, sacrifices that parents need to make, part two. So, last month, what I was talking about was there are basically three general ideas, three sacrifices that parents need to make in order to have a successful Christian family. Number one, you have to have a massive sacrifice of time. A lot of people aren't willing to put in the amount of time required to produce a great product. I think of Arnold Schwarzenegger. He didn't go to the gym once every other week.
No.
Okay. To produce, wasn't he Mr.
Universe?
Yeah, that's a thing, right?
Okay. So. He was Mr. Something.
He was whatever the biggest Mr. whatever was.
Forever.
Yeah. For many years, very famous bodybuilder. He obviously put in a tremendous amount of time to be able to get there. In the same way, if you want great kids, you have to be able to put in a tremendous amount of time. That's a big sacrifice for parents. Number two, big sacrifice is money. A lot of times people don't want to spend the money on what is needed to get a good product. And then number three, and this one I mostly put for dads, but let's face it, if there is no dad in the picture, maybe it's a single mom, the parent has to be willing to make difficult and unpopular decisions that the kids might not like, that is difficult for the family. You might get pressure from outside of your home, your in-laws, your friends, your people you go to church with. They might give you, put pressure on you because of the difficult and unpopular decisions that you make. So those were kind of my three basic ideas. And then last week, we went into several different subjects that require those sacrifices in order to be successful and have a strong Christian family. Any thoughts or comments from last week, or not last week, last month?
Well, that was a while ago, but what you're describing is those things you had to do on an ongoing basis too.
You do.
So it's constant.
It is.
You have to have thick skin, I guess.
To be a good parent, I think you really do.
Every day.
Not only do you have the world that is pushing back, you oftentimes have people you love, family, friends, neighbors, all of society telling you that you are crazy for the way you're doing things. And I want to just, I know we're talking to our audience, but I want to mention directly to our audience, if everybody in your life doesn't have a problem with the way you're parenting, you're doing it wrong. If everyone all of your neighbors and all of your family and all of your in-laws and everybody, nobody takes issue with the way you're parenting, you're doing it wrong, because the way people want to live their life is not the way that God wants us to live our life. God wants us to live our lives contrary to the flesh and to the world. So if everyone is on board with whatever program you're doing, something is wrong. Now, there are going to be lots of people. Yeah, it's absolutely. If it's too easy, you're doing it wrong. There are going to be plenty of times where you will meet people who see the results you have. They see your kids and they want to know what you're doing because your kids are very different. And you can talk to them and explain it, and you will win them over to the Bible way of doing things. And you will have very big, strong supporters of what you do. I'm just saying the majority of people are not at a first glance, at their first time hearing what you do, they are not going to support what you do, because you are trying to you are trying to follow the Bible way, God's way, and people just bristle when they hear the way that God wants things done.
Yeah. With every part of life.
Everything.
Yeah.
No matter what it is. All right. So the first idea we wanted to go over was this idea of a large quantity of time. Have you ever heard that idea that, you want to spend quality time?
Yeah.
Or quality time is, what's important.
Right.
You got to spend quality time
over quantity. I've actually heard that phrase before.
A lot of times people bring that idea up, and I want to smash that idea to pieces as a stupid and unbiblical idea, because quality time comes out of a large quantity of time. You don't just get to select, all right, we are just going to meet, for 10 minutes.
This is
4 times a day, quality. And this will be quality time. You don't get to decide that. A lot of times your kids determine what is going to be quality time.
Or your mood or your blood sugar.
Yeah,
You're hungry.
Yeah, depending on you and how you feel.
Yeah.
Your kids just flip it on and flip it off like a switch when they want. All of a sudden, they're attentive and they want to know about something. Well, you're either going to ignore them at that point, or you're going to take an opportunity. So I would like to go back to Deuteronomy chapter 6. And we talked about this. And to be honest with you, when we were setting up the cameras, I don't know where my Bible ended up. So let me just look real quick to see. Yep. This is the level of professionalism you can expect on the Bible Thumper podcast.
What was the idea?
Well, I wanted to read you Deuteronomy chapter 6, like 5 or 6 verses. You know what? We went over it last week, and I have it here in my notes, or at least the basic idea, and I could probably quote some of it. Do you see?
Well, tell me what is the general idea? Is Deuteronomy 6?
Yeah, I'm just going to pull it up. It'll just take a second.
Well, yeah.
Go ahead.
I mean, we're talking about quantity of time over quality. And I was just thinking about, maybe I'm going to get ahead of ourselves, but how often the kids come up to me and they want to do something and I push it off. And that's something that stung me this week. It was just some random, silly little Facebook post, but it got me. And it was talking something about that, how you need to be there for them while they're young. And it went over the numbers, how much percentage of time you have till they're 12, until they're out of the house. And I thought, oh, my goodness, I need to quit doing all these good things I'm doing and stop working, cleaning, doing stuff for other people, and take that time out and spend more time with them. Anyway, do you get your verse? Yeah,
I do. Deuteronomy chapter 6, starting in verse 5. This is something that God has Moses talk to the nation of Israel about before they're going into the promised land. So the people listening to this have already wandered in the desert for 20, plus years, some as many as 40 years. And they are about to go into the promised land. And God has kind of given them a little bit of a recap of a lot of parts of the law. And he's reminding them how important it is to worship him. And he says, and thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thine heart and with all thy soul and with all thy might. And these words which I command thee this day shall be in thine heart. And thou shalt teach them diligently unto thy children. And thou shalt talk of them when thou sittest in the house, and when thou walkest by the way, and when thou liest down, and when thou risest up. So this is a commandment given to parents. Fathers need to take this commandment seriously and understand that they are charged with teaching their family the law of the Lord. And thou shalt bind them for a sign upon thine hand, and they shall be as frontlets between thine eyes, and thou shalt write them upon the post of thy house and on thy gates. And we're going to stop there. So God talks about how the law of the Lord is supposed to be this thing that is around you all the time. There to be as frontlets between thine eyes. There, you're going to write them on your wrist. You're going to write them on the doorpost of your house. The idea is they're going to be on your mind. They're going to be before you all day, every day. And you're going to talk about them with your kids when they lie down, when they rise up, when they walk by the way. So it's not just a set time. It's all day long when the opportunity arises. And that is, the opportunities come up while you spend a great deal of time with your kids. You don't just schedule 5 minutes 4 times a day throughout the day to have quality time. A lot of us don't get to decide when that quality time is going to be. You need to spend a lot of time with your children. The whole ministry of Jesus was spending every waking hour with 12 guys for 3 years.
Right.
Lots of those hours were not all that inspirational. They weren't full of miracles. They weren't that amazing, but the opportunities came up while they were spending a great amount of time together. And statistically speaking, half of that time was below average.
Right.
Okay, all 3-4 years weren't just mountaintop amazing miracle times of walking on the water and watching Jesus heal lepers and get sight to the blind. Those things happened, but there was a lot of time spent walking from one city to the next city.
Trying to get from point A to point B.
You had to cook meals, you had to eat, you had to deal with injuries, you had to there were so many things that had to be dealt with.
Right. Monotonous life. You know, I don't want to interrupt you.
You're fine.
But I'm thinking of Jesus walking and living every day with disciples, and I see my own life and other people's lives where you're spending day in, day out with your kids all day, every day.
That is the model.
Right.
It's a picture of that.
So randomly, now you're making me think. Our 8-year-old comes up to me at the worst possible moment.
Yeah.
Mom, is Jesus going to destroy the whole earth? And I'm sitting there cooking and thinking about, I haven't, my hair's in
3 other things to do, which are legitimate things.
Yeah, I have to eat this thing now. I have to get dinner ready.
And someone's coming over and we got to clean a thing, or we have an appointment we got to get to, and I got to feed all the kids before we go out the door. Those are realistic things.
Well, yeah. And that's when he asked me these questions, and I have a great opportunity to answer. Those are the kinds of things you're talking about, right? All the time.
So my idea is that your 7-year-old comes up to you and wants to talk while you're in the middle of a task. Washing the dishes, cleaning the bathroom, changing the oil, mending the fence, whatever. As a mother of 8 kids, do you think the question that your 7-year-old is about to ask you is vitally important?
Well, usually no.
Usually no. Because most of those questions have nothing to do with anything.
Why do unicorns have horns?
You got it. Okay, what color are the unicorn horns?
Yeah. Do you think that unicorns are real?
So most of their questions are useless, time-wasting questions. And that is because your 7-year-old treats you like a Google search bar.
Yeah. Right. Mom knows everything.
That will just answer every question that I have the moment it pops into my brain on any subject.
Yeah. Hey, Mom.
You got it. And there is no concept of good or bad timing. There's no such thing as reading a room with little kids. They just have questions. You can't spend 10 minutes answering every single question of theirs. But 1 out of 10 questions are going to be valuable. And they don't have to necessarily be about God, but they are going to be good, valuable, teachable opportunities. And answering the questions, those important questions especially, promote intimacy between you and your child. That is how we form a bond and grow a relationship with other human beings, is by talking to them. So talking to our children is one of the best ways to endear them to us. And we want them to not only love us, but we want them to trust us, and we want them to feel comfortable coming to us with questions. Unfortunately, that starts as soon as they're able to talk.
Right.
And
ask how many questions.
And ask,
there's a number.
Yeah.
What
a
is it?
million, billion, trillion, quadrillion.
Yeah.
Yeah. Questions a day.
Exhausting questions.
So if you think about it, as soon as they start talking, the ratio of worthless to worthwhile questions is all the way here. Almost every single thing is completely worthless. And the older they get, the ratio changes to where more and more questions make sense and are applicable to something.
Yeah.
Rather than them just having a thought pop in their brain and them running to you as if you're Google with nothing to do but answer their question. It's easy to have the idea that I'm just busy, go away. I'm busy, go watch cartoons. I'm busy, go play outside. I'm busy, go play with your sister. I'm busy, whatever. But we need to spend the time with our kids answering not every question. And that can be something you can try to train your kids to do, which is, hey, that's a great question. Write that one down. We'll talk about that at dinner time. You know?
There's certainly times when you can't,
absolutely.
We could all be more available, though, for sure.
Yes. And when the opportunity comes up, we have to take that opportunity.
Yes.
And when we read about the life of Christ, he didn't get a say as to when the blind person would approach him and call out his name. He didn't get a say in when the woman with the issue of blood for 9 years or 12 years, I don't remember which it was, would grab the hem of his garment and some of his virtue would depart from him. He didn't get a say in those things. He was always on his way to do something. He was living his life. He was teaching his disciples. But these things came up, and these are the things that are recorded in the Bible. So Jesus stopped what he was doing and asked, okay, who just touched me in this massive crowd? And there was something that he had to deal with, and everything stopped, and he dealt with it. And for us, with our kids, especially, and if a parent is even a little bit in tune with the Holy Spirit of God, they're going to get some pressure from the Holy Spirit saying, hey, dummy, you need to talk to your kid. Like they're lobbing you up a softball. Swing away, hit the thing. You need to take this opportunity. This is a good one where you can spend some time, sit down, stop what you're doing, talk to the kid for, however much time you need to and is appropriate. They are going to learn a lot. They're going to walk away remembering what you talk about, and the subject matter is important.
Yeah. That reminds me of some things I've read about, different homeschooling gurus or philosophies where they were having.
I love gurus.
I was trying to think of a descriptive. What is it? What
an adjective?
Yeah, I was like experts. No, I don't trust experts. That's not the word. Anyway.
What would it take for me to be called a guru?
I'm going to call you a guru.
Okay.
Bearded guru. I can't even say it.
Guru.
So, per people who I trusted their opinion.
Guru-like people.
Yes. Okay. So anyway, the idea behind their philosophy of education was you use those teachable moments because that's when the kid is wanting to know and it'll sink in and it'll stay.
You got it.
I mean, how many times are we in school and we're not interested and we don't learn anything?
We
don't care.
Yeah.
So when that button is switched on in their brain, so to speak, and they're asking, that's the prime time to
That's when they're interested.
The thing they're asking about.
They're literally thinking about it right then, wondering, hey, how does this work?
Yeah. So like in school, that's when they say that's the prime opportunity to teach on ABC.
And that's when the bell rings and you go to lunch.
Sorry, class is over. So the same thing can apply when you're home and they're asking about spiritual things or something else. So that's just what I was thinking about when you were talking about that. My guru.
Yeah. Okay. So something else I wanted to mention from the Bible, giving kind of the idea about quantity of time, a large quantity of time, and the idea that during that large quantity of time, opportunities are going to show up. When we look at the missionary journeys of Paul, he spent long periods of time in a city where he started a new church. So Paul would go through this process, and it seems like he repeated
church planting type,
the church planting process that we read about in the book of Acts. He would go to a town, He would preach at the synagogue. Some people would love what he said. Other people would hate what he said. Those Jews from the synagogue wanted to follow Christ. He would start a new baby church from there, and then he would continue to preach to the Gentiles. And a whole bunch of Gentiles would come to Christ. So now he had this brand new baby church of Christians. Some were Jews, some were, it looks like the majority were Gentiles. Mm-hmm. And he would have a group of people with him, from a few folks up to over a dozen or so, depending on where he was. And we get that from the letters that he wrote, and we know who was with him at different points. He would spend years with that baby church. And we read about that. He spent 1.5 years when he was in Corinth. He spent 3 years when he was at Ephesus. The Bible talks about how he spends years and years at that baby church, working with these people, training them in the Bible, teaching them the scriptures, and raising up some leadership. Then he would select several folks and say, okay, you're going to stay here, and you're the pastor, and you're all going to work together and keep this work going. And then sometimes he would take some new people, some Christians who, I don't know, maybe showed promise, or, he liked their cooking. I have no idea. But he would take some more people with him, and he would move on, and they would go to the next big city, and they would do the same thing. And they did this again and again and again. But it didn't seem like he was in a rush. He spent years with this group until he felt that they were in a position where they could grow and they could thrive. In the same way, the point of this is that training anyone takes a lot of time.
Yeah, it really does. And anything, jobs.
Absolutely. There is no way for anyone to become an expert in any industry in 1 year or 2.
Right. Yeah.
That's why they have apprenticeship programs for plumbers and welders and all kinds of things, because we're not just going to put you at the highest rung of the ladder and make you in charge, make you management, put you in charge of big projects. There's lots of things you need to learn on the way up. So in the same way, our children, we cannot look at our children as burdens. We need to look at them as our greatest mission. This is our job, is to take this child, this infant, and not only attend to its physical needs, but to attend to its mental and spiritual ones as well. And when the opportunities show up where they want to talk about God and they have questions about the Bible, that is literally God showing us they are ready to start talking about these subjects.
Yeah. We were in the car, it was a month or 2 ago, and our 8-year-old piped up. All of us were in the car with the children and I. Mm-hmm. He said, "Hey guys," he was all mad, indignant. "How come none of you have prayed for me to get saved?" And he thought that we would do it and he'd be saved.
Sure.
So I thought, whoa.
Yeah.
I should have been, where have I been? Mm-hmm. Well, I haven't talked to him about any of this.
So I just had a conversation with a couple. I told you earlier today, I got to visit a couple that's been coming to our church off and on.
Yes.
Got to give the gospel to the mom and dad. They got saved today. It was very exciting. And they told me they wanted to, their kids wanted to get baptized. And that's usually a good time for spiritual matters are being brought up by the kids. That's a time to pursue that. And I said, well, we should probably, talk to all 3 of your kids and give them the gospel, and then you can all get baptized together. And they thought that was a great idea. And I asked them about their youngest daughter, who is 7. And I said, and they were like, yeah, she's actually brought it up to us a time or 2 about God and the Bible and heaven and hell and things like that. And I said, that's perfect. That is literally God showing you, guess what?
She's ready.
She's ready. Okay. Because she wants to know about it. She's thinking about it. Mm-hmm. Great. Time to give them the gospel. Some people ask like, oh, how soon is too soon? Or I don't want to wait too long. And for me, I've never been, this sounds kind of callous or I don't know. It sounds wrong. I've never been that concerned about when to give kids the gospel, because they will let you know when they want to hear the gospel. They will hear about it, they'll think about it, and they'll tell you, or they'll start asking questions. Guess what? As soon as they start asking questions, tell them about the gospel. Open the Bible and show them who Jesus is, and go through the plan, and pray with them so that they can, receive Jesus as their Savior. In the same way, you never have to worry about, is my kid eating? They're going to tell you when they're hungry. Yeah, believe me.
That's a good point.
They will stop you no matter what you are doing. They will come and tug on you and say, I'm hungry. Okay. It doesn't, you can be on the phone with the president. They are more than happy to stop whatever you're doing to tell you they're hungry. Yeah. In the same way, God has put that into children, that they will tell you when they're ready to hear the gospel. So when they tell you that they are ready, give them the gospel.
I guess I never thought of that.
So that's the way that I teach it. Other people might say I'm an idiot and that's the wrong way to do it. I've often seen it where parents, I don't know, they're like concerned that, what if my kid dies young and they never heard the gospel? And okay, first of all, if your kid dies young and they don't understand the gospel, they go straight to heaven because they are young and they don't understand the gospel. We're not going to get into that whole idea right now. I've taught on that subject before. I don't know if anyone wants to scour the internet for I have a 10-minute lesson on what happens to babies and infants when they die. But you don't have to worry about that. As soon as your kid is ready to hear the gospel, they will let you know. As soon as they're thinking about godly things. Now, if your kid is 10 or 12 years old and hasn't brought it up, okay, you want to approach them with the gospel. But that's probably because you're not going to church. You don't have Christian friends. Yeah, you're not reading the Bible together as a family. So
yeah, people outside of church.
Yes.
Maybe.
So if you're living a normal Christian life, and by normal Christian life, I mean Bible reading time is a normal thing for you and your family. That's not like something weird. Okay. If that's what's going on, you're going to be talking about spiritual matters all the time. You're going to be talking about heaven and hell. The kids are going to be going to church with you, and they're going to be learning about it in, their Sunday school class or their, junior church time or the nursery or whatever, however your church does it. So they are going to be involved and around it, and they're going to bring it up to you. It's not something that you need to worry about. If you have nothing to do with church or God or the Bible, and you're not reading the Bible and talking about God at home, okay, well, yeah, you might have to bring it up because they've never thought about that subject. But what I'm saying is, for normal Christian families, you don't have to worry about it. Your kid's gonna, believe me, they're gonna bring it up to you. Anything further on that?
No, nothing further on that.
All right. The other thing we wanted to talk about was teach your kids whatever you wished you had learned as a kid. And the idea, obviously, is that teaching your kids all the things that you wished you had known about as a child is going to take a bunch of time. For you to train your kids properly, that's going to be a massive sacrifice of time. It's going to take you a lot of time and energy to teach your kids all the things that you had never learned. But that is kind of a good roadmap for any parent. What I tell people is, your parents failed you in some way, okay, because they're human. You and I are failing our kids in some way because we're human.
Wait for their podcast.
Yeah. and this point, the point of this is not to beat up on our parents.
Right.
The point is simply, you want to learn from your parents. You want to take all the good things that they had done and you want to repeat that. You want to apply all the good lessons you learned from your parents, all the good things that you and your family did, and all the ways that your parents guided and directed you and taught you. We want to replicate that. But we also want to think about all the things that we did not learn that we wished we had. And guess what? We have this perfect opportunity. We can teach our kids and we can teach our grandkids. And that's all I'm saying when we get into this idea of what do you wish you had learned? So we both wrote down a list. So for me, I wrote down number one, I wish I was taught about money.
That was on my list also.
Well, stop trying to fit in, JoAnna. Okay, you're not cool. So on my list, I wish I was taught about money. I wish I was taught how to save. I wish I was taught how to invest. These are all things that are obviously very important. And my dad did all these things.
Yeah, he did them for himself.
He did all of these things for himself. He had pensions. He had mutual funds. He had money that he saved. You know, he was a very conservative guy with his money, but he never just stuffed his money under a mattress, you know, or in a mattress, I should say, and hoped everything turned out. He never spent every dollar that he had. He was a sharp guy and he had wisdom and he was conservative with his money. He just never sat me down and taught me these things. And my dad was never the kind of, you know, take the bull by the horn and sit down and have a long talk with his kids. He was not that. It just wasn't the way he was.
Sounded like that was a custom in your
It was. I mean, my grandfather was the same way, you know. I mean, that's, I don't know. Anyway. I don't know where it came from.
Right.
But either way, he did that his whole life. He just never sat me down and taught me the importance of it. I was very fortunate that when I was, 19, 20 years old, I had someone that turned me on to Dave Ramsey and gave me some of his books. And I started reading through them and I was really, kind of blown away by a lot of the statistics and this information. And what I've learned, especially as a pastor, is that a lot of married couples have no idea what to do with money.
That's so true. So many people I've talked to, it's no one's taught them anything.
No,
it's just this perpetuating cycle. No one,
and where is the place that it's not being taught for all of us?
Home and church. No.
Nope. Strike one and two. Government schools.
Oh, right. Of course. No, that's not taught. That's people talk about that all the time.
And this is and I just want to take the opportunity to beat up on government schools if I can.
Can't believe I didn't think of that. You didn't want to jump in there.
The reason so many valuable things are not taught in government schools is because the purpose of government schools is not to educate your children. So stop thinking that it is. That is how you have been fooled as an adult. They have lied to you and told you that the goal of the government school is to educate your children. It is not. The goal of the government school is to make your child into an obedient subject who is reliant upon the government. That is the goal.
And somebody who is just swayed by propaganda. That's what it is.
Yeah. Don't
just
think,
them propaganda.
Just obey. Just, shut up and
vote for.
You got to do your part, and don't ask any questions. A lot of people have trouble swallowing that. But realistically, when we're going to go over some of these things, this is what I'm going to tell you. 1/3 of all marriages that end in divorce, it's because of problems with money. Okay, one study from the Kansas State University for the National Survey of Families and Households reported that arguments about money are by far the top predictor of divorce.
Wow.
If that's the case,
we should.
Don't you think that it's not that hard? Out of all the things we can teach children, money is the most objective. How to handle money is not subjective. Right. There aren't conflicting views. It's math. It's very easy. You cannot spend more than you make.
If you are in the government, you can.
If you are in the federal government, you have not learned that.
But the rest of us cannot.
The rest of us cannot live by those rules. So it's very easy to fix this problem. You have to get on a budget. You have to save money. You have to invest money. And investing just $35 a week, you can retire after 40 years with something between $950,000 to $1.7 million, depending on a few factors. And that's if you never get raises, you never increase your cost of, you never increase your
salary.
You never increase your salary. You never get promotions. If nothing ever happens to improve your life and your work and your income, and you only make minimum wage your entire life, you can retire with $1.5 million in the bank and never have to work again when you're 60 if you do these couple of things. Don't you think that should be taught?
Absolutely.
Somewhere?
That's gold. That's education gold. Well, no, they don't want kids to know that, I guess.
They don't. And
figure out another reason why.
So many parents are not raising good kids and strong Christian families because they think the government school is doing something that they are not. They think they are helping your kids for, 12, 13 years. They are not. No. They think your kids are learning valuable things in government schools. They are not. It's I don't want to say a complete waste of time, but I'll say 90% is a total waste of time. And because of that, all these kids are going out into the world and they are ill-equipped. Every young married couple that I have ever talked to that learns about what a Roth IRA is and how it works, they all wish they started one when they were 15 or 16 years old. Okay, everyone that learns how to live on a budget, how to save money, how to live within their means, they are grateful for that lesson and they wish that they had been doing that their entire life. So why aren't we teaching that in government schools? Because they are not doing it, guess who has to teach it?
Me.
Parents. You got it.
Yes.
You and I have to teach it to our kids. Someone else has to teach it to their kids because no one else is teaching this. So that is the whole idea. I wish that someone sat me down and went over this again and again with me. They bought me some books. They handed them to me. They said, you're going to read this. You and I, we got the Dave Ramsey homeschool curriculum for our kids, and we're having our kids go through it.
I'm glad you brought that up because I wanted our listeners to know. Go to the Dave Ramsey site and they have homeschool curriculum, or just click on the curriculum button and you can order your own curriculum for home.
Yeah.
They have one they actually have some for elementary school, which I haven't looked at, but the high school curriculum, it's great. It's just a DVD set, and he's not even sponsoring us for this.
No, this is all free, Dave. And, we expect a kickback in some manner. Yeah, help us out some way, somehow.
Yeah, so our oldest has gone through it, and he opened his Roth IRA this year at 16. And our 15-year-old is going through the same curriculum. So that's such a great program. And Dave Ramsey it's a great program for anyone.
Yeah, I've read at least 3 of his books, and I've read other books written by people in his
camp.
Yeah, or his ministry,
right.
I don't know if I'd call it a ministry, but you understand the idea. People that he works with that, are on his radio program. He sells these books on his website, his camp. That's probably a good phrase. And I've read, several of those, and we will buy the audio books and hand them out to people, or at least I do. I don't know if you do, but when I see them go on sale, I'll buy a 10-pack of the Dave Ramsey audio book. I don't know what you call them. They're like gift cards, and you go on to Google the podcast, and you can download these books. One of my favorite ones is Everyday Millionaires.
And that was the one I was trying to think of.
Yeah, it's a really good book. I've read that one, several times. I've listened to and read several of Dave's books. Anyway, I wish that somebody had sat me down and made more of a point of explaining that to me. And I think everyone would say the same thing. By the time you're 25 or 30 and you start thinking, man, I really need to buy some life insurance. Man, I really need to start worrying about my retirement. It's like planting a tree. You should have done it 10 years ago.
Yeah.
That's when you should have planted a tree.
You want that compounding interest working in your favor.
You got it. You had one that you wanted to bring up?
Let me see. Well, I wish my top thing that I wish someone would have told me is that being a wife and a mother is a noble profession. And that I don't have to worry about or try to develop some career. That was so much pressure on me. And in my heart, all I wanted to do was be a mom and a wife. And I think these days, most of society is pushing women into careers.
And they're not only pushing women into careers, they are talking down about being a mom and a wife. They're talking about it as if,
oh, it's yucky.
That's it. That's all you're going to do with your life. Yeah. And that's the complete wrong way of looking at it. Being a wife and a mother is not just okay. It's okay to be a wife and a mother. No, it's a lot more than just okay. It's one of the most important lifestyles on earth. And people are constantly talking down to wives and mothers. They're constantly rolling their eyes like, oh, you don't have a career and you didn't do anything with your life.
Right. You didn't do anything with your life.
Yep.
I was thinking about this. The people that are promoted, the women that are promoted as wonderful and amazing are movie stars, career women, politicians,
Kardashians.
Yeah, I was thinking, we all know. I'm not going to get into that. Never mind. What about the moms? What about those that choose to stay home and actually spend time taking care of their household and their kids?
Yeah.
Movies, TV, all of it is making it look like this horrible burden. And, oh my gosh, I can't wait to leave this house.
Yes. And television shows oftentimes make it look like dealing with kids in the house is it's a nightmare. It's a burden. Everybody hates doing it. Why did we ever have kids? That kind of idea. And what they're doing is they're promoting talent over character.
Yes.
And in the same way, if you ever see you see very few reality TV shows about farmers, right?
Right. There's one I saw, but
sure.
One.
You see very few. Is that the British one?
Yeah.
That was nonsensical. That wasn't a real farmer. That was a guy that retired as a multimillionaire and was an idiot who wasted all kinds of time and money.
I shouldn't have gotten into that.
Not farming. Yeah. So my point is, you don't see a lot of reality TV shows about plumbers and farmers and
moms.
You got it. We're moms. Okay. These are, we'll call them all professions that are not looked at as glamorous enough or worthwhile.
It's not glamorous.
You got it. You're never going to hear a mom at a cocktail party bragging about her daughter who is a wife and mother of 4.
Right.
That's not what you hear. You hear people bragging about their kids at a cocktail party who are lawyers and who are doctors and have degrees and are making big whatevers, and they're the CEO of whatever, and that's what you hear about.
Yeah, the whole thing is such a mess. And women have sunk their teeth into it, and they've gone with it, and they are miserable.
They're crazy.
Well, and they're stressed out to the max because even though, like it or not, I am going to sound like the most sexist woman in old-fashioned.
Go ahead.
But the kids and the husband still look to her as her natural role.
Yes.
Like,
as
Mom,
a wife
I
and a
need
mom.
my laundry. Okay, and I cannot get around this. This is something luckily I wanted. I wanted to be what I am. In Proverbs, all over the Bible, it says the woman's place is at home.
Go ahead.
Can I just say that?
Yes, it's a Bible verse.
That's your number one job.
Yes.
It's a God-given role. You cannot get around it in the Bible.
No, you cannot.
In Proverbs, it says, she looketh well to the ways of her household and eateth not the bread of idleness. And then in Titus 2, I have it here somewhere.
Yeah, go ahead. I think it's 2:11, but go ahead.
Yeah, it's talking about aged women teach the younger women all these things, and one of them was to be discreet, chaste, keepers at home.
You got it.
It doesn't tell the men to do it, although
No.
I've noticed some couples where the man is sick, work, right?
Yeah.
So the woman's working. Okay.
There's always
It's an outlier, right?
There's exceptions, but exceptions prove the rule. That's what exceptions do. The exception isn't what we're all supposed to follow.
Well, yes, and the Bible says, it literally says to be a keeper of the home.
It does. It absolutely does. Titus 2:5, be keepers at home. Right. I say that constantly. That's where a woman is supposed to be. They're supposed to be a keeper of the home. Now, I have found plenty of women that find a side hustle,
yes,
or they find a job where they can be a keeper of the home. But the idea is not that you have a career, you have a kid, you take a few months off, and you put the kid in daycare, and you go back to work.
That's what I'm thinking. You know?
100%. That is totally anti-biblical.
I am. My favorite thing to do is work. You know that. I do stuff. I make a little money for us selling honey and vegetables, and I like to do things. But I can honestly tell you, I never was told it was okay for me to want to be a wife and mother.
Sure.
And that's all I wanted.
Yeah.
And I was told actually by everyone in my life, you really need to go to college because what if?
Yeah.
And I didn't want to go, and I did. And for me personally, the whole thing was a waste of time.
Sure.
I went into debt. But I didn't have any guidance really. So, God worked it out for me in the end. And I remember actually, this is anecdotal, but like 3 years ago, you had some people over that we didn't know well, and we were getting to know them around the campfire. Yeah. Nice people.
Sure.
Very career minded. Yeah. They're both professors. The guy was very kind, but he asked me, "Hey, I was wondering, you, JoAnna, if you didn't have kids, what would you be doing?"
Yeah.
I had no answer.
Sure.
I never even thought like that. I said, I don't know. And I thought to myself, what he was asking is, what would you have done with your life?
Yeah. If you didn't waste it being a mom.
What's the real JoAnna supposed to be doing? Because your kids are great, but
Yeah.
And it hit me. I'm like, I don't want to do anything else. I love this. And I don't know how many people can say this. I can tell you, I am 100% fulfilled today.
Yeah.
And I love what I'm doing. And it's so freeing to know, hey, man, great. I can, care for the house. I can cook the meals, and I don't find it drudgery. I like it. And I think a lot of women actually like it. If they didn't have the pressure of, man, maybe I should be the breadwinner too.
Sure.
I think that's where they get fouled up.
Well, and another thing is, and we've talked about this in the past, but it's worth mentioning now. Far too many people, they see the brass ring and they see other families and the stuff that they have.
That's part of the problem.
So financially speaking, boy, our life would be way different. We would be bumped up several brackets as far as lifestyle if mom went to work, because let's face it, we're making a living with dad going to work. And we're making an okay living, but there's not a whole lot of extra money to have fun with. Well, guess what? If dad's entire salary is paying the bills and there's a little bit of extra money for fun, mom's entire salary is discretionary. We can do whatever we want with that. And we can do a lot of fun stuff. We can buy a boat. We can buy a second home. We can waste our money on all kinds of stuff. And people see that and they're like, yeah, would it be worth it? And wouldn't it be nice to have these things and to provide these things for our kids and to give our kids the lifestyle that we never had? And it's nonsense. And it's not what your kids want.
That's right. They just want to spend time with you.
They just want to spend time with you.
Yeah. Well, and that's just our culture. It's how it is. And a biblical lifestyle is constantly being flooded out by tsunami waves of culture.
Yep.
Just, this is, and it almost just kind of gets ingrained in your brain. Like, this is what life is.
Yeah.
I'm supposed to work. I have to help. I have to work.
There was a pastor that I really liked listening to who was down in Texas. And he was telling a story about his ministry and this young guy who was working at his church who I don't remember the age, but the young guy seemed to be like in his, kind of later 20s. And he was telling the pastor this story about how he was from a larger family. There's like 7 or 8 kids. And he said, there was a year or two in his childhood when he was like, maybe like 12 years old, where his dad lost his job and he wasn't able to, they lost their house because they had a couple of setbacks altogether. And their family just kind of like moved into an RV and like, they traveled around the state a little bit and they did kind of odd jobs and they were just trying to save up money and scratch out a living so they could get back on their feet and kind of, start their life over again. And the pastor was talking to this young guy and he's like, man, that must have been, so difficult, for you and all your siblings. And that must have been such a hard time. And he stopped and looked at the pastor and he said, those were the greatest years of my life. Yeah. And he said it with such a straightforward, like, are you kidding me? He said, I got to spend every single day with my mom and my dad and my brothers and sisters. Wow. He said it was the greatest time of my life. And
we forget what it's like to be a kid.
You got it. My mom often tells the story. Okay, so my grandfather on my mom's side was an immigrant who came to America on a whaling boat. And I'm talking about you get in a small rowboat and row away from the big boat and throw spears at the whale. Yeah. That's what my grandfather came to America on one of those.
Hardcore whaling ship.
Him and his cousin got off the boat in New York City where they came to harbor to sell whatever and to resupply and go back out to sea. They got off the boat, they walked around the city and they're like, see you later, we're not getting back on the boat. And they stayed in America and that was it. He ended up working at a very famous fish market called the Fulton Street Fish Market. It was not cool and hip and trendy at the time when he worked there, but that was his industry that he knew was seafood. So he worked at the fish market. And then him and his friends saved up and they started their own fish market. My mom grew up very poor. Her mom, my grandmother, died when my mom was a kid. And she really spent a lot of time raising, her brothers and helping her dad, with everything in the house. And this was back in a time when there really was no welfare. There was no food stamps. There wasn't really much of anything in the way of assistance. And my mom will tell me the stories about how she never knew how dirt poor she was growing up. Not one time in her life did she think she was poor until she married my father and they moved away.
Yeah.
And then she looked around and saw the rest of the world and how everyone else lived. And she was like, oh my soul, we were so poor. Never had any clue. She said her childhood never missed anything. And my grandparents and great-grandparents on my dad's side, they lived in these tiny little, Brooklyn apartments.
Yeah, how many?
13.
13 people.
My grandmother, I'm pretty sure, was one of 13.
In a Brooklyn
in apartment. A 2-bedroom apartment.
Yeah.
And they were
not the penthouse.
No,
penthouse.
Nope. Everyone was fine. Everybody was happy. That's how people lived. And
everyone's forgotten that.
Everyone has forgotten that. Everyone thinks Disney World has to be a part of your childhood. Everyone thinks that, 4-wheelers and big vacations need to be a part of your childhood. They don't. All your kids want is to spend time with you. One of the problems is that we send them to government schools and we let them on social media and they get on the internet and they start seeing all this bright, shiny stuff that they want and that their other friends have. And they all become a bunch of spoiled brats because they think that they are owed these things. And what they need is a bunch of parents to tell them, no, if you want one of those things, you can go and get a job and work for it yourself. But instead, the parents just buy them a PlayStation 4 and then a PlayStation 5. And they're on the waiting list for a PlayStation 6. And they just get them whatever they want. The kids don't need any of that. They are totally happy just being around their family.
Yeah. So you have, instead of the mom being at home and spending a lot of time with the kids,
yes,
caring for the house, being less stressed, Instead, you have both parents working, and
Yep.
then everyone has more devices and more stuff.
Yeah.
And they spend less and less time together.
Have you ever been to a third world country?
I have not.
I've been to a third world country in poor parts of the third world country, and I have never seen happier kids. Every single kid on the street that I saw was happier than every American teenager, like outside of our family and a handful of others. And they were barefoot playing soccer in the streets with a piece of garbage.
Yeah, not even a soccer ball.
Nope.
Right.
Yeah. And what I'm saying is all that junk doesn't make somebody happy. What makes people happy is being around their family and having that safety and security and love and support. Now, would it be great if we could provide all of these poor people in America and in the world clean drinking water and sanitation and shoes? Yeah. And I would love to do that. That's another discussion for another day. What we're talking about is that being a wife and a mother is a noble profession. It is critical to the health and strength of Christian families, and it is critical to the foundation of our country, which is the family unit. And you do not get strong Christian families when both parents are off working and they're not spending time at home with their kids. What you get is pregnant teenagers. That's what you get.
Well, and, I lost my train of thought. However, I was thinking, I'll say something else. When you're talking about turning around and teaching what you didn't have, I want to make sure to make this a point with our daughter and our sons.
Yeah.
Being a mother is one of the most important jobs there is.
Yep.
God told us to do it. He specifically told women, this is your place.
Yep.
I know what that sounds like in today's culture.
Doesn't matter. Today's culture is full of morons.
Well, and I can tell you, I could go out and probably do anything.
Sure.
I'm not saying that to be egotistical, but I stay really busy.
Sure. You can get a job. You can excel in your job.
Anyone who knows
You're the only one in the house with a degree.
Yeah.
You have a college degree. I don't.
Right. But I like it. And this is what I knew I was supposed to do. I'm glad I've done it.
There was a lady on TV. I can't remember her name. She was very famous. She had a show that was like, was it Julia Childs? It was a show, this lady that was a little bit older, and she would teach, recipes and different homemaking stuff. It wasn't like Martha Stewart. It was a woman who was, very much a talented, strong woman who was really focused on her family and homemaking. And I remember listening to her one time, and she was explaining, this is after she was off TV, and she was, this is back when there was TV, you'd have channels with a remote. Like we're talking.
You had to watch it when it came on?
Yeah, whenever it showed up. Yeah, and there are these awkward things called commercials that got in the way. So anyway, this lady, and I'll have to look it up, but there was an interview she was doing, and she was, and the questions were coming up about, do you regret, spending so much time as a mom, raising a family, being a wife, and not having more of a career? You were clearly very successful with this television show, and you could very clearly have done a lot more in these, other arena. Yeah. So, aren't you, do you have any regrets was kind of the question. And her answer was so profound. She said, all of these women that were my age and my generation were sold this lie that leaving the home and excelling in the world in business was going to be so satisfying and so fulfilling, and it was going to make you so happy. And she said, all of these women that bought into that lie, so many of them gave up having kids in order to pursue their career. And she says, you want to know where they are right now? She said, they're alone.
Wow.
And she said, I am surrounded by dozens of grandchildren. And she said, you go ahead and tell me who's better off. And the person doing the interview was kind of speechless. Like they didn't know what the follow-up question was to that because they were expecting an answer from the other side of the coin. And she's like, no, I'm surrounded by literally 100 people in my family who, love and adore me, and we want to spend time together. And she said, when I die, my funeral is going to be massive, and a lot of it's going to be my family.
Yeah.
And all these other women, they gave up all of that in order to what? Make some money?
It's for themselves. For their own satisfaction and their own pride.
Yeah.
See, I could not imagine for anyone out there thinking, I want to promote myself and what about me?
Sure.
I need to excel. It's my turn.
I need to make something of my life.
I need to make something of my life.
And raising kids and having successful children doesn't count.
Yeah. I'd like to challenge them. Exactly.
Yeah.
That's nothing.
Sure.
That's you. I am the support system for my husband and my children. And right now, you don't have any idea the satisfaction it is to give your children a leg up. Because of me, I'm driving my sons around to work. I've been available to drive them to their jobs when they're 15.
Yeah.
And get in their permit. Because of that, both my sons are able to work at 15 and get references under the belt and start filling their Roth IRAs.
Yeah.
Because
and getting
I'm
experience, getting people skills, they have all of these valuable things in their life because they have a parent that can be home, to help teach and support them.
And my whole satisfaction comes from helping them get this massive leg up in life. And I feel awesome about it.
Sure. You get to help them achieve greatness.
Yeah, they're going to have, like I said over and over again, because I'm willing to do this and I'm not focused on my career or my glory or whatever it is, they're going to be ahead in life. And I'm giving them a great boost out the door.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's my plug for.
Yeah. I'm
grateful.
No, we talked about this before we ever got married, and we both had the same idea. We wanted a big family. We wanted to homeschool. We had some of these ideas and we talked about them ahead of time. I do know that it's not easy being a single income family. That's not easy. And when you and I started, and that's something that, should really be brought up right now. We were a family of 8 living in a 900 square foot 2-bedroom home. I'm going to repeat that. We were a family of 8, mom and dad and 6 kids living in a 900 square foot 2-bedroom house that was 100 years old. And that's where we lived, and we did great there. And we bought a house that we could afford, very small, very old house, needed remodeling, but we could afford it. We put a lot of sweat equity, into that house. And while we were there, we were able to save up a bunch of money over years and years and years, over a decade. And that was what allowed us to get a real leg up when we bought the farm and then built a house on it. But in the beginning, we were so dirt poor, it was a joke.
Yeah, I remember really sweating it out every time I had to make my groceries.
My constantly.
Menu planning.
Yeah, we had lots of times when the money was coming in and it just went right out, in the front door and right out the back. We didn't have a lot of extra money. We had to be real careful with every dollar. Our vacations were pathetic. We had a trailer, a little camper that was given to us, and we'd go camping in places that were free. Right. Yeah, we really, had to do that. And a lot of people, I don't think, are willing to make that sacrifice to make it work. It is possible. Okay. People all over the world do it. People live with less money than the poorest of Americans all the time. It can be done. A lot of people are not willing to. And I understand that it's very hard. I'm not saying that it's not. It's difficult at times. And if you want to be a single income family, have the mom stay at home to be able to raise the kids and to homeschool the kids, you need to apply a lot of other biblical principles to your life. You can't just expect it to work without applying all of the financial biblical principles to your life. You have to be smart with your money. You have to get on a budget. You have to pay your tithes. You have to pay your tithes so that God can bless your money and it can go further. There are all these things that you have to do.
But he will do it.
Absolutely.
God provided for us, and he does it with everyone.
He still does it. Literally just this last week, God reminded us of how much he is in charge of our life by bringing us a vehicle that we were praying about.
That was a huge miracle.
For
years.
How many years?
I don't even know. 9 years?
Years and years and years. You know, Dad is driving around a work truck that's 30 years old.
245,000 miles.
No, the odometer is broken. Yeah. You need to add an extra, I think it's an extra 75,000 miles. It's almost, it's like 350 something thousand miles on that truck.
I didn't know. It's an even bigger miracle.
Everything on it is breaking. I mean, it's just a money pit. It's falling apart. And we've been praying about it. And I've constantly been so hesitant to go and buy a vehicle because I hate buying vehicles and everything was so expensive. Everything's through the roof. And then, we're looking and all of a sudden this deal comes up. And when I first saw it, I was like, something's wrong with this thing.
The guy who sold it said he had it marked so low.
Yeah.
That he said, I had like 5 people ask me if this was a joke.
Yeah. Like, what's wrong with this thing?
Is this real?
Yeah. And when we saw it, we thought the same thing because we had been searching for the same type of work vehicle for a while. We had a pretty good understanding of like what they were going for and how many miles and all these different things.
Yeah, the price was a typo. He left something off.
And
we thought.
And when we went and looked at it, we're like, this thing is amazing. This thing should be selling for $40,000. We thought would be pretty competitive. Maybe the high 30s, 37, 38, 39.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we got it for 26.
Yeah.
I mean, literally almost $15,000 off. And you were the
first one to see it.
I was the first one to see it.
Weren't 12 people lined up to see it?
Yep.
And he had 800 views.
You got it.
Facebook Marketplace.
In like a day.
Right.
And the first day it was up. Just bing, bing, bing. Everybody's looking at this thing. And that was the same thing that happened with this property. When we were looking for this farm, the day that we made the offer, they dropped the price massively. And then they had dozens of offers that day, and we were first in line. My point is simply, this is not good luck. This is the blessing of God. God explains that he will bless those that try their best to obey him and follow his ways. And we are far from perfect. There is no way.
Speak for yourself.
Yeah. I have often looked at our family and I'm like, man, we got a long way to go. And, these different things where I'm like, boy, we're not doing this, but we need to start doing that. And I was like, I hope God's okay with this, but we can always look back in our family and I could stand before God today and I could say, God, we really were trying.
Right.
Okay. We really did. And when we learned we were doing something wrong, okay, we would make a change. Sometimes we'd drag our feet because we didn't want to make that change, but we would make the changes, and we're grateful for the graciousness and long suffering of God to deal with stupid sinners like us. But seriously, God tells us that he will bless. And so many people, I think, are scared to do the will of God because it doesn't make sense. And it doesn't.
No. Okay,
it absolutely does not make sense that you give away 10% of every dollar that comes in and 90% that you keep will go further than 100% if you kept it all. That does not make sense.
Or you bless a single income. In today's day and age,
you got it.
Everything's so expensive.
Everything's so expensive.
How's that going to work?
How is it going to work where God's going to bless a single income family if the mother stays at home and remains a keeper of the home? That doesn't make sense. Okay, God says he's going to bless. It's not easy to step out in faith and do these things, but there are Christians all around the country that do, and they all have the same testimony.
There's still, you run into families where there's a stay-at-home mom and sometimes a stay-at-home dad. And,
and it's a weird thing. It is
weird.
It's so rare that it's weird when you run into. Think of how many of our friends, married people our age, have a single income family. Yeah, it would take you. Yeah, not many. Yeah. Now, obviously, and I should say this, and this wasn't even the purpose of the podcast. Yeah, we got stuck on this one. I know.
That's one I've thought about a lot lately.
Yeah, and I'm glad we're talking about it. Prior to having kids, go ahead. Go work,
Oh,
go do whatever
right.
you want. There's there's nothing wrong with that. The purpose of being a keeper of the home is so that you can take care of the children.
And the whole household.
Yeah, everything that goes along with the household. The father can focus on,
Yeah.
being able to do his work, which oftentimes takes a lot of hours,
Yeah.
and wipes him out.
But the children are the primary.
You got it.
You're training them and all that.
And they're the ones that take up the time. Did you ever?
A million questions a day.
I was just thinking about the story of Mary Poppins.
Oh my. Okay, where's this going?
Okay, so Mary
I'm not
Poppins.
taking the sugar.
No. So Mary Poppins. If you think about the story, and so there were 2 movies about. Okay, there were 3 movies about Mary Poppins.
Oh, really?
There was the original one with Julie Andrews. Was that it?
Yeah,
it was the
Julie
original.
Andrews.
Okay, the original Mary Poppins. Then there was the remake.
The newer British one.
The newer
Jim Halpert.
Yeah, Jim Halpert from The Office. What's his real name?
Oh, Krasinski?
Yeah, John Krasinski. John Krasinski, who I think he wrote and directed the movie The Quiet Place, which I really liked. So if you watched The Quiet Place, which was a horror movie, but an amazing one.
Mary Poppins is in it.
His wife is his wife in the movie.
Yes.
Who played Mary Poppins in the remake.
Yes.
Okay. So no, there's a third.
What?
There's the movie about, I forget the
Mary Poppins?
It's the movie with Tom Hanks when he plays Walt Disney.
Oh.
And the movie is about him making the movie Mary Poppins.
Yes, okay.
And my understanding was it was a true story.
Yeah, that was a good movie.
It was a great movie. It was very funny. One of the funny things that came up is the writers who were writing the movie Mary Poppins. So the lady who wrote the book, because Mary Poppins is based off of a book from a British lady that no one knows the name of. I'm sure somebody does, but I don't. Yeah, whatever. So she was invited to America to help with the making of the movie, because she did not want to sell the rights to the movie. She wanted it to retain.
She wanted it to stay her story, right?
Yes, she wanted it to retain its dignity in the movie. So one of the funniest scenes in the whole movie is there are these 2 guys that work for Walt Disney who are writing the movie, the screenplay, and making the songs and writing the original score for the music. So they're going over this, and one of them asked, hey, and I don't remember the name of the family. So Mary Poppins came to London to help a family.
Right.
Of which there were 2 children, right?
Yeah.
Peter Pan was 3 children. Mary Poppins, I think there was only 2 children, a boy and a girl.
I think so.
So one of the guys that was the writer asked this lady who wrote the book, hey, what's the mom doing during all this? Because the dad was a businessman that was like off, doing whatever.
Rights for women.
Yeah, and he was like, where's why is there a nanny here? Like, what is the mom doing during this whole
scratch the movie?
Yeah.
Get the mom back in
here. It was so funny.
Word,
and the lady got so upset explaining who do you think you are? And this woman has whatever keeping her busy. And they were just, and the movie was made in the early 50s, I think. And that was still a time. It was right after World War II. And it was like, women, still were mostly keepers of the home, and the husband went off to work, and it was more of a traditional family. And it was just such a funny scene. So I'm
going to watch that.
Oh, you got to look that up. It was so funny when you saw how upset this lady got. So anyway, if the mom was a keeper of the home,
Mary Poppins wouldn't exist.
Mary Poppins wouldn't exist, and you could save your money on flying nannies from
It was a good
wherever.
movie, though.
It was, they were very good movies. All right.
That was a long one. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. So being a wife and a mother.
And we can teach our kids Yes,
absolutely.
We will.
Yes. I'm glad that we learned the lesson from some kind Christian families that we've encountered throughout the years. And I'm glad that we can, pass on this idea and this teaching to our children and to, other families. With that, we're at an hour and 15 minutes. I think this is a good time to knock it off. We have several more points, but we'll save them for next month when we get together and discuss Christian families and we make everyone mad talking about different subjects. So thank you, everyone, for joining us at the Bible Thumper podcast, where somebody's got to say it. If you would, we now have a website, which is the BibleThumperPodcast.com. And if you go there, you can email me. You can also email me at BibleThumperPodcast@gmail.com. And at that website, BibleThumperPodcast.com, you can find us. You can find links to our Facebook and YouTube channels. You can watch these videos live. You can comment while we are doing these in the studio. We can read your comments and answer your questions. You can also find us on every place that you download and listen to podcasts. Amazon Audible, Stitcher, Google, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. Go there and search for the Bible Thumper podcast. You'll find us there, and we are live almost every Sunday night, starting at 7 p.m. or very close to it almost all the time. Thank you for joining us, and we will catch you next week.